You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
What's up, the internet? It's producer Kyle. How's it going? I have Cheez-Its in my shot. I thought I had gotten the Cheez-Its out of the shot. Cheez-Its are in the shot. The call is coming from inside the building. Look, normally, I do a lot of little things to get ready for the show, like put the books in the order I want to show them in, and in the case of this week's show, rank everybody by beard correctness, so that we can put us in the right order on screen. I did none of that this week because, well, the Weird Al movie is out, and I've been pretty much focused on that in every aspect of my life for the last 5 days. So, if you're here, put in the chat your favorite Weird Al song, and we will talk about in a few minutes how my first band was a Weird Al tribute band. That's right. I was in a band with a bunch of guys who didn't know how to play accordion, playing accordion parody songs. Figure that one out, the internet. This is In Stores This Week, where we talk about books that are in stores this week. And right after this, we're going to talk about books that are friggin' in stores this week. As you will notice, this week, we are joined by an extra pasty dude in a hat.
Yep.
And that Sean is here. He was here last week, too, because Jay was a schmuck and wasn't here. But because Sean has the week off and he reads all the books anyway, I assume just by standing over Jay's shoulder and going, turn the page, turn the page, turn the page.
Scroll down.
He's joined us. So... we are here to talk about books that are in stores this week on this Election Day 2022. So hopefully you voted, and if you haven't and the polls are still open where you are, come back and watch this later. Go do that. But if you're where I am and the polls are closed, now you just have to wait and cry. Or not, depending on your political affiliations and whether or not you choose to watch the news, which I will not. So, should we go around the circle and each talk about our hats? I don't know what to do from here.
We can. I mean, I'm just
Christmas at Ground Zero is one of my favorite Weird Al songs.
Oh, The Night Santa Went Crazy?
No, Christmas at Ground Zero.
Oh, the other Christmas song.
Christmas
Night Santa Went Crazy.
Ground Zero.
Yeah. I'll be honest. The Night Santa Went Crazy is the better one.
That is a good song.
It's fair.
I don't know. Pretty Fly for a Rabbi. I thought I always laugh when I listen to that one.
The white guy.
Yes.
Mecca Lecca High, Mecca Heiny Ho.
I'm going to go with Dare to Be Stupid for personal reasons.
Is it because that's how you feel about me right now?
No,
Transformers the movie.
not everything's about you, Kyle.
It's fair. For me, the answer is probably Albuquerque. Because it's the first song that I ever memorized that was more than 5 minutes, and I knew every word and knew how to play. And I'm like, why do I know how to play this 11.5-minute song that no one needs to know? Way back when I was just a little bitty boy living in a box under the stairs of the house half a block from Jerry, on the corner half a block from Jerry's paint shop. You know the place. All right.
I don't think I realized how popular Weird Al was until I went to BlizzCon one year and he was the band.
Yeah.
And it was the year after Ozzy and he got the same reaction.
It's true. I still am waiting for Weird Al to be the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh,
he should be.
Awesome. That would be so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody could get offended by that's still alive. The only person who would is Coolio, and we don't have to worry about him anymore.
And they patched it up over the years.
Sure. But like the only person would be like, really, Weird Al gets to be the Super Bowl halftime show and I'm just over here. So anyway, as I walk through the valley where I harvest my grain, I take a look at my wife and realize she's very plain. Let's talk about comics.
All right.
Speaking of not plain, though, the Grim Fairy Tales pinup special.
Yeah. This was the least Christmas story I've ever seen in a Christmas special or a holiday special. It was like, hey, we got this storyline around. Let's throw that in the front and throw a bunch of pinups in the back that's got a holiday theme.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That pretty much summarizes it. I mean, the really crazy part is the story was actually kind of starting to get good by the time they stopped it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's just a filler connector piece. It's the Rogue One of Zenoscope, you know? It doesn't really exist without what happens before and after, but it's still kind of a little bit entertaining. But then the pinups, you have to read. It's the only time you have to read the captions just to realize who the hell it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's true.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So there are a number of new Christmas specials coming out this year, including Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell in one. There's a new A Christmas Story Christmas. Apparently The Rock and Chris Evans are in one. And
really? Yeah.
yeah, and there's another one that just got announced that's coming out this year. Is there a Christmas special you're most looking forward to that's new?
Maybe
I'm gonna go with the one with the Christmas Story sequel, but mainly because I'm fascinated by Peter Billingsley, who went on to be a producer for Marvel, and it ended up being the poor guy who shaved his head to be yelled at by
Obadiah.
Jeff Daniels or Jeff Bridges, you know, a box of scraps, you know. So then
It's true. Like Vince Vaughn and a bunch of those guys worked on that movie. I'm excited for Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds to be in a musical.
Yeah.
that'll be good.
yeah, but if you're on TikTok, you get to see them singing together anyway.
It's true.
I'm gonna go the complete opposite direction in that. What is it? Violent Night movie.
That one.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
David Harbour.
Good.
Mhm.
Yeah, that looks so good.
I'm actually going to rewatch a friend of mine's movie called Secret Santa. That was written and directed by Adam Marcus, the guy that did Jason Goes to Hell. It is one of the most demented comedy horror movies I've ever seen, and I love it. And it actually has the quote on the front cover says, "It's effing brilliant without it being edited," and it's my quote.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, no, like this is a weird year for Christmas movies, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But this was not a great Christmas book.
It was barely a Christmas book.
It's true. All right, Specs #1 from Boom Studios. David Boer.
Yes.
It's the premise is that these kids get a pair of magic 3D glasses from the back of a comic book that grant wishes, and it's about what those wishes are.
Yeah. We had David Boer on yesterday on Talking Shop. He was the first guest right before Dan Jurgens talking about this book. He sold me within the first 2 minutes. And I thought this was a great first issue. Most of the stuff that was wished for, my friends and I probably would have wished for it too, to be honest with you. I like the little Easter egg, and I won't spoil it, but there's a little Easter egg when they're in the arcade and they're about to play a game of another character that David does that I am a big fan of. And although it's set in the 80s, this doesn't feel like it really glamorizes it. David does an awesome job with his writing of about the struggles of sexuality and dealing with racism, and then just turning this fantasy book about glasses from the back of a comic book that grants wishes. Like right on the last panel, it's like, okay, we're going to turn this now into something a little bit more horrific, but that's where it leaves you. I am definitely going to be adding this to our pool box.
This felt to me like a Stephen King short story where he spends a lot of time with the characters and building them up and building this very believable life. And then suddenly just a little thing happens and everything goes to hell. It's an interesting story. I don't know if it's necessarily in my wheelhouse. And there's one thing that bugged me, but other than that, I think it was a good story, And I think if you like those kind of Stephen King horror stuff, then this is definitely worth picking up. The thing that bugged me, and it still bugs me, is the glasses themselves, how they just showed up. Because I was enjoying this character-driven story about these people, and then the glasses. And if they had been left over in the attic with the comics, then I would never have thought twice about them. But now I'm like, who the hell sent them? Where did they come from? Now I'm more focused on the origin of the glasses than I am about the people now, which I think detracts from the story. Where, like I said, if they were just in his brother's stuff, his brother had ordered them or his dad had ordered them or whatever, that would have, to me, left the focus on the characters.
That's fair. Yeah, I agree. I think it was a solid first issue. Although I didn't think much of the glasses now until you said that, because they mysteriously show up at 3 a.m. Yeah. But I think they specifically pointed that out, as I think that's going to be something maybe that David will touch on a little later. To me, the main character really felt a bit like an extension of David himself, based on the couple of interviews that I've seen of him and listened to him talk about some stuff. It seemed a little bit like he injected himself into that character just enough, but and whatnot. But I thought it was great. I love the art. I'm very, very curious to see where they're going in the next issue and whatnot, because David, I think, is a really great writer. Just take him outside of Kanto and some of his other work, I've always thought is great.
For me, this was the part of the Stephen King books I don't like. The kind of the slow build before the insanity starts. Right? That's always the part when I pick up a Stephen King book that I struggle through. Mm-hmm. It's usually the first 30 or 40 pages of a book, especially Stephen King, where it's like, I know if I keep reading, I'll get to the part that I want, but you got to get through that first part. Like, it's the upside of the hill on a roller coaster, where it's just like the tension is building, that it just feels like a slog. Because I trust David Boer as a writer, I'm willing to look past the plot hole that Dan pointed out, and some of the other ones that kind of are just here, right? Like, what do you mean the dad threw away all the brother's stuff? Like, what is happening there? Why is that relationship mentioned but then not confounded, not expanded upon? These kinds of things. I trust that he will get there. When a writer I trust less, I maybe would be like, hey, these are really problematic. When are we going to find these things out? You've got a short window here with me. So, definitely worth reading. It's definitely a unique concept, but yeah, it's got some work to do. All right. Up next, Firefly Keep Flying, #1.
I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I had a hard time with this one, not because I couldn't tell who was who. I couldn't tell, was that supposed to be River dating that girl or involved with that girl? Because for a while there, I thought that was like Wash's daughter. But then that's somebody, I was very confused through reading it. That and that Mal's supposed to be 60, but he still has a full head of brown hair.
Well, so does Nathan Fillion. Let's be real. Some people just have better genetics than the rest of us.
Yeah, but Nathan Fillion's not 60.
He's got to be close.
No. He can't be far off. He's got to be in his 50s at least.
Well, yeah, but
I will say, as I've never read anything from the Firefly universe, I've literally just seen Serenity, the movie. So if you're a first-time person coming into this book, you probably are not going to like it too much. And I've had literally everybody that I've told this to tell me, he's like, just go back and read other parts of comics from the past, and you'll actually see why people like it, because this is not the best representation of it, from what I'm gathering. It was all over the place. The art was cool, but it was a little all over. The love story seemed a bit generic in a lot of ways, even though it had that little bit of a sci-fi element with the psychic connection. But overall, just it was not a for me thing.
Yeah, like I loved Serenity and I loved Firefly. I love the movie Serenity until a certain part, which this book feels like it retcons that part in the very beginning.
Ah,
yeah,
the leaf on the wind.
Mm-hmm. Now,
are we talking about how Reavers clean their spears?
Bob, no,
they wash them.
They run them through the wash.
Oh man, that's terrible. Now I gave it points for that, right? I took away points because for me, when it came to the art, it feels like the characters' designs change from panel to panel. Like there's a certain face one panel, and then the next panel, the face looks completely different. It's the same character though. So I took away points because the art was kind of weird to me. I was bored with this. Like, I'm starting to think that maybe the series and the movie is what I should stick with when it comes to Firefly.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're writing these books for the TV show audience, or at least, I was a fan of the series, but I didn't watch it till after the fact. I binged it all and the movie in one night.
Mm-hmm.
Loved the show. But, and I remember watching it when it debuted, but never getting a chance because they debuted it on a Friday night, But it doesn't feel like it has the same audience as the show did.
No, I agree.
It doesn't feel like this is a sci-fi Western. This feels more like a romance novel.
Right. Ironically, for me, I like the all-new Firefly series that David Boer, ironically, is writing. Much better as a continuation of the Firefly saga from the movies and TV show. I don't necessarily like some of these spin-offs. Normally Boom does a really good job with continuing IP that has since been canceled by television or whatever.
Yeah.
I think this is a case where they've dropped the ball.
And they're not even really trying to make the characters look like the characters.
No. I was really confused.
Yeah.
It's true.
Can we just get name badges on people?
Yeah, that would be helpful. If
you need one anyway. They should have had name badges.
Right. If everybody had to, wear a mechanic's uniform, with their name right here. Okay, got it.
Even Kaylee didn't look like Kaylee.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is, that was a problem for me.
Yeah.
What up, Ed, Nick, Lyle?
Cool
Gamer was here a while ago, and I didn't say hi. What's up, guys?
Lyle.
Yeah, where is Lyle at that it's 20 below zero?
Northern Michigan, Canada? I don't know. That seems like something that's going to happen here.
Oh.
He's sitting in the back of a dry ice truck. It's really weird.
All right. So the next book, this is Billionaire Island, Cult of Dogs, #1. Did not feel like a book that should have come out today or this week. Like having to read it on election day just seems like a unnecessary bashing about the head.
I'll go ahead. I want to get this one out of the way. So, didn't feel like any of the other Ahoy books we've read. It's like very toned down, at least for Ahoy, with the absurdity, which still has it in there. But, did I laugh at the phallic shaped rockets? Yes, because I'm a 12-year-old boy inside. But I feel like they either should have taken the absurdity out or leaned into it, because this book was so middle of the road to me that it got boring near the end of it. I'm like, yeah, it's supposed to be our reality with absurdity, but this just felt like too much reality and not enough absurdity for me. Like that's just this was a big Ahoy is usually hit or miss with me, and this one was a miss for me.
Yeah. Same thing. Snooze fest for me. I was kind of just sitting there waiting for the whole book to just go somewhere. It seemed like for 3/4 of it. And then finally, maybe at the end of the interview, it seemed like, okay, we're going to kind of go somewhere. And then they still left me flat at the end. And so, I mean, visually, it wasn't bad to look at. That's probably why I was able to get through it. But story wise, God, it was. I was just waiting for it to end. I can see where some people might like it, but this is definitely a not for me kind of thing.
I thought that it was about as preachy as Survival Street was at the end, without the absurdity. They should have done more with the business dog because that was the only interesting thing. And if you're gonna give us the idea that there's an island full of dead billionaires, we need that in the first issue.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's just bait and switch.
Yes, I agree.
This was, if you took the things that made Survival Street good, that made it work, and you threw them in the garbage, and then decided to make everyone sad by beating them up with your political opinions, that's what this book was. And here's the problem. I don't necessarily disagree with Mark Russell's political opinions. But,
Yeah.
dude, if you're going to preach to the choir, maybe preach instead of just bashing them. Everything about this to me just screamed, I have things I want to get off my chest, so I'm going to make a comic book about it. And I'm not going to put in any of the effort to make it worth reading. I think Ahoy probably could have spent their budget better if they would have scrapped this whole project. And I don't like to be that mean about a book. Like, usually I can try and find a redeeming quality. This did not have one, except for that there's a dog on the cover.
And there's good art. The art's pretty good.
I didn't even really like that much. But when on the third page you're looking at a giant purple phallus or two, the art is no longer relevant to me. You've already hit me over the head with your giant purple phallus, and I'm no longer interested in what you have to say.
See, and that is where I was like, okay, it's going to be that kind of book. And then after that, none of it. It was like, how are you going to give us that and then completely flatline for everything else?
Yeah. And in a week where some of these other books that we're going to talk about existed, like Specs, like Lord of the Jungle, like some of these other books that were so good, this just feels like a waste of paper in a world with a paper shortage. Yes. Minor Threats number 3. I'm going to go first. I did not like Minor Threats number 2. I was wrong. I misunderstood what it was to be. And having read this, I want to amend my statement on Minor Threats number 2 and come back around and say that book was pretty good. I quite enjoyed this book as well. Now that I understand what it is, right? Like, each book is a different perspective from a different person. Whereas I thought it was all going to be from the one person. And we're starting to see the through line from the one person, but still more information from other characters. So now that I understand that, I really am enjoying this series, and I think that it's well written, and I'm interested to see where it has to go. This issue for me felt maybe a little chaotic for someone who wasn't into number 2. So I need to go back through and kind of reread and kind of reset. But overall, it was a fun time.
Yeah, so hadn't read anything of this series until this issue, but that aside, absolutely brilliant. I am becoming a bigger fan of Patton the more of his stuff that I read. And this is one where I definitely am going to try to go back to Space Cadets and see if I can find issues 1 and 2 and get caught up. I loved it. I thought the art was absolutely brilliant, especially in the beginning when they're doing the quote unquote surgery. That to me was a couple of the most brilliant panels that I've seen out of anything we read this week. And highly recommend this to anybody if it's just a really, really fun story. It's chaotic, but in a good way, in my opinion.
I'm really enjoying this series. I've got little complaints here and there. They bring in this heroic character to chase him for a bit. We don't really get any context to that character. And I realize that we don't care about her. But, it still would have been nice to get a name or some kind of description of power or something. But that's, like I said, I have nitpicks. I thought the ending, and this just might be me, I may not have got it, confused me a little. It sounded like somebody ratted, well, I don't want to say, but I was a little confused by the ending, but I did like the issue a lot. And I love the fact that there's that weird thing in the middle of the city that they have to go through.
That was cool.
Yeah.
And I agree. It's weird. I wonder if they're going to touch on what you were talking about at the end in the next issue, just to bring that more to light. Because that seems weird to just bring that in like they did.
Yeah.
All right. So after a couple of negative things that I had, I love the story. I love the fact that we're getting different character narrations with every issue. I really enjoy that. It's a fun story. It's starting to get really twisty, especially there at the end. I'm already excited to see what the next issue is going to bring. I really want more folks like Patton and David DeSmulchin to write books, because both have just been awesome comics in their own ways. I'd be interested in a Nick Cage Superman, and regardless of how you feel about Cage, he's a huge Superman fan. He's got a son named Kal-El Cage. I think at one point he'd owned Action Comics #1, or still owns. Just me, but back to the book though. Back to the book. I read this in the order it was sent to me, so this we could have had 10 terrible than mad books, but if this was book 11, I would read every single one of those books just to get to this one. It's just this is my favorite book.
All right. I said early on this week that a lot of the books were super meh.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of them that I was really disappointed fell into the meh category for me. The first half, which is the camping half, or at least that's the way I read it, because that's how the PDF is formatted.
Yeah.
Okay, we move forward. We're kind of getting to, okay, this has some plot. The second half just seems like, oh, we're just going to goof around and cause a bloodbath every issue. It's not, that story does not seem to be moving forward nearly as much as the camping story is. And that to me is why it falls into that meh category, right? It's like, we're going to work hard on one part of this, but not on the other. And so if both of them were moving forward even a little slower than they are, I think it would make the book stronger. But I'm very pleased with the direction the camping story is going. I will be interested to see if, what happens in the next issue, which I think is the end of these two stories.
Well, for me, I think I'm on track with you. The first story gets progressively better. When we first read this, my number one complaint was, because I didn't know, I thought these were just truncated stories just to fit two stories in a book. But then when we got that next issue and I found out, oh, okay, we're going to continue both these stories in the issues, I was like, okay, well, then I like this book a lot better now. The camping one feels like it's fixing to end. The second one with the haunted house, the demons, whatever you want to call it, for whatever reason, that feels like it has another issue or two before it's even close to being over, which is like, it's strange that the pacing, I know they're two different stories, but you would think if you're releasing these at the same time to get to, well, when you get to issue 4, that's what both stories end, that they'd kind of be on the same track pacing wise. And the second story just doesn't have that. I like it, but I think the camping one is a stronger story. But that's just me.
See, I'm the opposite of you two. I just want everybody in the camp trip to get killed so we can be done with it. It just feels like a bunch of just the caramel frappe latte wearing plaid type of people out in a camping trip, and suddenly they're trying, it might be no, just
Dan's trying real hard not to say the word yuppies.
There we go. That's it. Yuppies.
Get off my lawn, kids.
Yeah, and I haven't cared for that half of the book yet, and this episode just again was like, oh good, that's another one off the list. More to kill. Where the other half of the story, I found the first two really interesting, and the second one I was like, ooh, yeah, I kind of like the idea that he's going to have to go against those things that have been helping him. And I want to know, does the ownership of the house come with those amenities? Is that why they're doing what they're doing? I'm more fascinated by the second story. I think there's more backstory there. There's more interest going on. The fact that, these things are happening and he's going to have to basically try to help people he doesn't even like. So to me, that's the more interesting of that than the yuppies in the woods,
Yeah, like I said,
Where
I can see that, Dan. I think that's a valid point. My thing was, I just thought maybe it needed to move faster.
See, and to me, it feels like that story's moving faster than the camping trip. But again, I have not read the first two issues, but the pacing in this book felt like they were trying to go really fast through the second story, and they were kind of tiptoeing around on the first one. And when they do the big reveal at the end with the monsters and whatnot, I'm just like, all right, cool. Everybody die now, please.
Right. Okay.
Great.
So here's my question.
Okay.
Would this book be better served if one of these was a main story, say 20 pages, and the other one was a backup story, say 10 pages, instead of a 50-50 split?
No, I think the first story would be better served if we actually cared about any of the characters, where we actually got time with the guy in the second story to see that he's trying to rebuild his life. We got a little more characterization, and I feel a little more connected to him, where it's hard for me to keep track of who's who in the first story.
That's pretty much how I feel about it. I mean, the second one, though, in a weird way, feels like they're glazing over the top of a lot of stuff, but not giving you much behind outside of the main guy. There's a lot left to the imagination, especially when it comes to those little demons and whatnot. So I'm curious how next issue they're going to try to close that or bookend it, because it really seems like you don't know a whole lot about him. So how is he going to, in 10, 15 pages, figure out what he needs to do and get rid of him?
Burn the house down.
That basically just, and again, you're still left with a lot of questions.
All right. Up next, Lord of the Jungle.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle.
Yeah, I went with George of the Jungle, and you went with an actual song.
Yeah.
Lord of the Jungle, #1 by Dan Jurgens.
So this was just a good book. Like, if you want an example of how a good comic is done, this is it. Great backstory, they give you just enough of like an origin for anybody who maybe hasn't read Tarzan to kind of understand it. And then I felt that the transitions between present day and the past and then back were actually, they made sense. Whereas in some books you're wondering like, where did that come from? Here everything made sense. It's a good story. I'm fully invested in what Dan and that entire team are trying to convey. And of course the art was brilliant. Just overall, just chef's kiss, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think not only do I really enjoyed the book, the interior art, the story, but I think these are some of the best covers Dynamite has done in a while. You know, between the Dan Panosian cover, the Gary Frank cover right here. Yeah, I think they hit a home run on this. This is a really strong opening first issue. We get the origin. We get a good feel for what's going on. Yeah, but we also jump ahead enough that it's like, wait, is that old Tarzan? How are we gonna? So, yeah, I mean, they gave us a lot to work with, but at the same time, they didn't just lay it all out. They're like, come back, gotta find out what's going on. That's but it's Dan Jurgens. I mean, the guy's been writing comics since, Superman was alive, was killed. And
yeah, I haven't read a Tarzan book in years, but what a perfect time to come back. Like, Dan Jurgens writing this, like, to me, that was a huge selling point anyway. And then couple that with the team that he's on this with, it's a winning combo. I enjoyed the story. It read kind of like an old Tarzan comic. They weren't trying to reinvent the wheel with this, and I appreciated that. I appreciated the fact that this wasn't trying to make him futuristic. It wasn't trying to do any of that garbage. It was just a good, straight Tarzan story. So really good book. Really good book.
I'd love to see them do John Carter in the same traditional style.
I'll be negative Nancy on this one. 25 different covers is 20 too many.
Are you buying all 25?
No, but that's why it's too many. There are covers here that I want that because of the sheer number of covers, I can't get to. They're ratioed or they're whatever. They're behind some sort of wall that I can't get to them. There's a really cool Amazing Fantasy variant that's a 1 in 7. Well, the way my store works, I can't get to it. Right?
You're welcome, Ed.
Right. So that's kind of the knock for me. There's a great Dan Panosian Virgin cover that I'd like to get. That's a 1 in 25, and I just can't get there. Like, at some point, I would like to buy every cover. There's a number. I'd probably buy 6 or 7 different versions of this cover if it wasn't behind some sort of wall that prohibits it. So 25 is maybe a few too many.
And if that's your only knock on the book, that's a pretty good review.
Right. The other knock I have is that I struggled with some of the time shift stuff.
Oh.
Not because it wasn't written well or done well, just because I struggle with that, we're jumping time periods here, and I'm trying to read so quickly that I think I'm missing.
When Tarzan's about this, it's past. It's like this.
But I'm not even necessarily looking at the panels all the time.
Oh,
that's how you read a comic.
I'm just reading I'm trying to read so fast to get ready for shows and stuff that I'm just reading the dialogue sometimes. Not intentionally, but it's just kind of the process, right? So the problem isn't with the writing or the way the book is done. The problem is with the way I consumed the book. Yeah, no, absolutely. So my note is going to be, don't try and fly through it.
Yeah. definitely take the time to read it.
It's a book that reads better when you read it slowly and you really take it in, and that thing. So my negative Nancy is there's too many covers and I have to read a little bit slower than I would like to. If those are my only complaints, you've hit a home run.
I'm the opposite. I'd be happy with that Gary Frank cover right there. And that blows my mind that's Gary Frank, because I'm a Gary Frank fan. And I looked at that piece and that looked more like classic Tarzan paintings and stuff. That's like Bernie Wrightson level. That's Joe Jusko. Gary Frank just knocked it out of the park also here.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like I said, my problem is I'd like to get all of the regular covers with the trade dress, and then I'd like to get all the virgins because I like to frame them. Like, they're all so good.
Yeah.
But I can't buy 25 copies of this book so that my LCS can jump up and order that virgin for me. So
maybe if you knew somebody at Dynamite.
I'm talking from an average consumer standpoint here, Dan. If I called Nick right now and was like, hey, can you send me one of everything? I'm sure he would.
I would like to believe that the average consumer isn't trying to get 25 covers.
Well,
right. But the problem is if there's one cover you want and you can't get to it because of X, Y, and Z gatekeep, that just comes from the way your store has to order the book, not even intentionally on the part of the publisher, right? That becomes a problem. If my store's only ordering 6 copies, I can't get the 1 in 7 variant.
Right. That's why it's called an incentive cover.
Right. And I shouldn't have to shoulder the entirety of the incentive.
Yeah, but you say gatekeep like they're trying to keep you from getting the cover. They're not. They want you to get the cover.
Right. No, I'm saying it's not on the behalf of the publisher.
Yeah.
It's just on the way that the process works. My LCS is only going to order 4 copies of this because that's, how many of them I ordered. So they can't get me the 1 in 7. Otherwise, I have to buy 3 more copies. It's just, whatever. When you can't get to a cover because of the rubric that is involved in the ordering math, it's a problem for me. That's all. And Ed, never. Crashing number 3.
Anybody else think the guy who complains the most about powered people may have powers?
Yes. That is in my notes.
Just wondering.
I'm glad that we all had the same thought because I think methinks the lady doth protest too much.
Yes.
Yep. But this is still a really good, unique book. It is, it's a superhero story without being a superhero story. And it's fascinating to me. It reminds me a little bit, wasn't about a year ago we were doing this 1920s style crime doctor book was out. So it feels like it's part of that, and maybe part of the Powers universe. And it just has a really good vibe to it. I am liking this book quite a bit. And and I didn't think I would. I was with the first one, like, yeah, it was pretty good, but I think it's going to tail off. I'm going to get bored with it. No, it just keeps me going. So,
This one to me, it was good, but man, it was depressing. It was depressing to me. Like, there's all these lies, and then a huge truth comes out. And, and I wrote, there's a big part of me that feels like a character has powers, but hasn't shown them yet. That was what I put in my notes. I kind of wish I knew where this book was going. Like, is there going to be a big superhero showdown? Or is this just a book about addiction and the fight to overcome it with superheroes sprinkled throughout it? Like, that's the big question I have.
I think the answer is yes. I know it's a multiple choice question, but I think the answer actually is yes.
Yeah.
There's a good chance you're going to get both.
Yeah. Like, it's good. I'm waiting for that reveal now. Unfortunately, that's not stuck with me.
So I'm on the opposite end of this, and I think it might be because this is the first issue I've read in the entire series. So maybe there's a lot from the first two that I missed that might have made this book more enjoyable. I will say for me, the art was not my thing personally, uh, but the story at least seemed interesting enough that I was able to actually go through and read it. Normally, and Jay will tell you, if I don't like the art in a book, I can't read it. But I actually powered through this one. I was like, okay, maybe there's something there that I'm missing from the first couple of issues that would help me enjoy this more and also just kind of understand where we're at when this issue takes place.
Yeah.
So,
Especially with y'all's theory on the whole someone has powers but hasn't revealed them yet thing.
so as someone who has struggled with addiction and some of those things, this issue was super triggery for me. In a good way, don't get me wrong. I thought this was the best issue thus far. And you're right. I'm with you guys on somebody clearly has powers and doesn't want to cop to it. Like, that's certainly going to be a thing. I'm not excited for a big superhero style showdown. I don't think it serves the temper of this book unless it's done right. And there's nothing that's happened so far that would lead me to believe they would do it wrong. If this all of a sudden turned into Civil War, right? Like Marvel Civil War, I think that's a mistake, right? I think it has to be way more nuanced than that in this. So I'm down for whatever they do. I think, for me at least, the thing about this issue is that no matter how deep you bury a lie, it's still right there near the surface. And it's one little trip triggers the whole thing to come out. And so you've got to be, you've got to pay attention to that kind of stuff in this book, right? Because you never know if what you're being told is the truth or it's a fabrication of the truth or it's some sort of, in the middle. So, like, we found out how they got together. And it was based on this lie, but not entirely based on a lie, but just on a little bit of one. And it's just this really interesting kind of the truth is a gray area story. And so I really loved this book. This was my favorite book of the week. And it was also the book that most bummed me out. So we'll see where that goes. Because we have a minute, I just want to take a minute before we go on and espouse two graphic novels that are coming out this week that I've had a chance to look at. And one of them we looked at here on the show, but we stopped reading it. I don't know why. I think it was just there wasn't enough interest among the group. But We Ride Titans, the trade paperback from Vault, is out. That book has a really satisfying conclusion. So make sure you check that out. Like I said, we read the first couple issues here. That was really great. And an original graphic novel from where'd it go? From IDW called FARM Farm System. It's a they're super strong, but they're powerful. Are they powerful enough for the big leagues? If superheroes were real, they'd be a lot like pro athletes. In this quirky graphic novel, go behind the scenes with the heroes trying to get their big breaks. It's this kind of, major league type story, except with superheroes, which seems super fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
I got to make it past the middle tier.
What is this?
Nice. Ooh.
Is that the Silvestri Batman?
Yeah, I didn't realize how much I missed Mark Silvestri's artwork. And then I got this, and I don't buy a lot of physical comics anymore because, we read them digitally. They also include the black and white pages in the back.
Yes, sir.
Which doesn't make it a very big comic, but I mean, come on, people.
That's insane.
So we don't plug a lot of the big books because we don't get them to review. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
So if you haven't picked it up yet, either plan to get the trade or go find a copy now while they're still available.
Yeah. The last one I wanted to mention, and again, this is a very much if it's your vibe, go get it. If not, no big deal. Z2 Comics has a book out this week, Cheech and Chong's Chronicles: A Brief History of Weed. If you're into the Devil's Lettuce, go pick that one up because there's no two funnier people than Cheech and Chong.
Agreed.
Back when we had answering machines and you could record your message, my brother took the "We're Not Home Right Now" song from Cheech and Chong and put that on our answering machine.
Yes.
But my parents couldn't figure out how to change it. So that was our answering machine for a long time. You're not home right now.
One of my favorite Christmas songs is "Santa Claus and His Old Lady" by Cheech and Chong. So,
Oh, Jesus.
all right, we got one book left. Sonic the Hedgehog, Scrapnik Island.
I want this.
2.
Uh-oh.
I don't want to like a Sonic the Hedgehog book. I have zero interest in Sonic the frickin' Hedgehog. Okay, nothing. I put this on here for Kyle because Kyle's always talking about, I need a light book. Can we get Archie? And I always forget to look for Archie because it comes to a different email. So I thought, okay, IDW is doing Sonic. We put it on here. We've read, this is number 2. And I'm freaking liking this book a lot. I don't know why.
Yes.
It's like a palate cleanser. For me, you talked about, this is my number 2 book of the week with only Lord of the Jungle above it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a fun book. It reminds me a little bit of some of the stuff in World of Warcraft, some of the newer islands and some of the lands that they put in there. But overall, this is just a fun freaking book.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the first thing that I said. I was like, another fun Sonic adventure. I had a blast with this. If you're a Sonic fan, pick this up.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I never played a whole lot of the games because I only had a regular Nintendo for most of my childhood. But I've been a fan of the movies, and I've been a fan of this series. This is only the second one.
Yeah.
And I'm such a fan of this. I want more of this. I hope this continues even when this part of the Sonic story is over. I hope the next Sonic the Hedgehog they do is as good as this one has been.
Yes.
It's an easy book to jump into.
Mm-hmm.
I dig the art. The story is solid. And, some of the cheesy lines made me chuckle, like scared the scrap out of me. And then when Sig says, what does he say? He says gears and starters, which is kind of a play on Beast's "Oh My Stars and Garters."
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy this book. I'm so glad it was on here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm the same way. I grew up with a lot of Sonic. Anybody else have Sega Channel other than me? Anybody?
Ed in chat.
So, I had Genesis, but I had Sega Channel, which is something you can get from your cable company, and you get like 50 games every month to play for like $7. So I got exposed to every Sonic game there was, plus the 2 cartoons that they had in the 90s with Steve Urkel voicing Sonic in one of them. So I loved it. And I got to read the first book. This is just fun in every aspect. It's fun to read. The art on the page is fun, and I even like how they got a little dark with it there at the end. It was a nice twist, and of course, seeing them expand on Tails like they do, because I was always a huge fan of Tails since he came in the second and third game.
Kyle's a little sensitive about Tails.
I don't like Tails.
Tails is awesome, but so is Knuckles. The only one
I'd rather have Knuckles.
See, the only one I don't know about is Shadow.
Well,
Shadow's
you get
the
a
word.
robotic Knuckles or whatever that is.
Mecha Knuckles.
Mechanical.
Yeah, that's why I said the dark turn that they took at the end was really cool. But this is one of those, like, if you just want to have a good time reading a comic and not have to take anything seriously, 100% this is a series for you. You will just have a good time. You will come out of it in a better mood.
Ed, the cover is Mecha Sonic's eye.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm your give me your dark, heavy, gritty, grungy, depressing comic guy. But I'm also your give me your turn your brains off, don't have to think. You can hear the voices in your head comic guy. Right? Like,
yep.
I don't want anything in the middle. I either want to not think or I want to be totally bummed out at the end. That's my jam. So this book is perfect. As great as Crashing was, as great as Lord of the Jungle was, this was my favorite book this week. Because as heavy as things are right now in the world, we all need a little more blue hedgehogs that can run really fast and collect rings.
Yes.
Or something to that effect.
And eat
chili dogs.
Right, and eat chili dogs. Like, that's what comics are, right? On some level, it's a way to go someplace that isn't where you are.
Yeah.
And this is that, right? It transforms you to this island, or transports you to this island where you can become totally enamored with the characters and with the setting and all of this. And you forget that this whole thing has a little bit of a dark undertone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Until you get to the end when they remind you this whole thing has a little bit of a dark undertone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't beat you about the head with the dark undertone. So it's super fun. It's a super casual read. IDW is doing great with Sonic. And the more Dan listens to me about these books, the happier we'll all be. Except for maybe Dan.
Can we get some Marvel DC stuff coming in? Just anybody?
Some more Valiant. I want another Bloodshot.
Oh, that series has been amazing.
Yep.
I'm hoping we'll be getting Source Point soon, and some Fair Square stuff from Fabrice, and some new we're gonna get Mad Cave. We already get Mad Cave sometimes, but having Mad Cave be more of a regular occurrence for us. Yeah. And Red 5. So
AWA would be a cool one too. They've got some really cool stuff out.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear back from Aquil.
I'm ready, waiting to hear some news about Karma.
Hang on a second. Was that a Beverly Hills Cop reference?
It was.
Okay.
I said it to his face, and he goes, "Why would you reference that movie?" And I go, because it's one of the funniest things that's ever involved the name Axel ever.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, but for a lot of years I've heard that say." I go, I get it. You've heard the joke. He goes,
yes. Want an espresso? I think I'm right in the back.
I make them right into the back. They're very good. Very good.
No, there's no news yet.
So, all right. Well, that will do it for us here on In Stores this week. Remember, head over to Comic Shop Locator and type in the zip code of the area where you are, and it will tell you where comic book shops are nearby to you.
Remember to follow the experience on all our social media. We have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, Twitch, all those places. So
coming soon, YouTube Shorts.
And maybe Mastodon.
And LinkedIn and MySpace.
Subscribe buttons too.
Yes, do all those things. Here's a story.
Yeah, so you now have homework.
It's true. So, Comic Shop Locator to find comic shops nearby to where you are and go visit them. In this time of great economic bagels, we should be spending more money in our local comic shops if we can afford it. It would be certainly helpful to all of them. Yes. Dan, we did that bit already.
Okay.
We will see you all next week. Sean, will you be back next week?
Yeah, I'll be here next week.
Woo! Sean will be back next week. So it'll be the four of us next week. and anybody else we could pick up along the way. We will see you. We will see you then for In Stores this week.
Bye.